We're lucky to live in a society where getting help is as easy as pushing 3 easy buttons, 911. It's something we're taught from the earliest of ages. But have you ever stopped to think about how that help gets to you in a time of crisis, whether it be a weather emergency, a car accident, or a medical problem? It's not easy, and a lot of hard work goes into it. Hingham has now joined with Hull, Cohasset, and Norwell to create one regional dispatch center. All 4 towns now dispatch their emergency services from right here in Hingham Town Hall. Now we're going to take you on an exclusive tour of the dispatch center to show you how that help gets to you in a time of crisis. Let's go inside. When you first enter the South Shore Regional Emergency Communications Center, located on the 2nd floor of Hingham's Town Hall, it feels like you're entering a mission control of sorts. And you are. The blue din of 8 computer pods makes it clear that this is a high-tech facility, responsible for dispatching emergency services to the towns of Hingham, Hull, Norwell, and Cohasset. The $5.3 million project to regionalize dispatch services was first proposed in 2008. Now, after more than 4 years of planning, renovating, and training, the dispatch center is running at full power. At the head of the room stands 4 large television screens. One constantly displays exterior security cameras or current weather conditions. On the night of my visit, a strong cold front was blasting through southern New England with gusts that reached 65 miles per hour in Hingham. As a result, dispatchers kept radar in sight. In the event of a bigger crisis, say at the high school, dispatchers would also be able to pull in off-site security cameras to monitor the situation. The middle screen displays the real-time status of all apparatus in the field, including police officers, fire crews, and ambulance personnel. On the far right, a monitor displays a satellite image corresponding to the location of the most recent emergency call. There's also a television equipped with cable to show dispatchers live news coverage, including sometimes helpful helicopter shots. Beneath the big screens sits the 8 computer pods, each equipped with some of the best emergency software available. That's one of the biggest advantages of this new regional dispatch center. Instead of having 4 towns operating on older, less sophisticated systems, this center boasts the very latest technology according to dispatchers who are very pleased with most of the upgrades. Day shifts are manned by 5 dispatchers, while just 4 staff the overnights. Each dispatcher is assigned a pod, a few fire or police channels to monitor, and several computers. We sat down with one dispatcher to see what his job is like. For privacy reasons, the dispatchers and callers will not be identified in this piece. One computer, seen here in the upper right-hand corner, can be used at the dispatcher's disposal. Tonight's dispatcher, working the Hingham Fire Channel, chose to display radar in anticipation of the night's wind damage. The screen directly below that computer acts as a telephone, giving the dispatcher instant access to the outside world. Speed dials are set up to reach individual police stations or other authorities like the DPW or Coast Guard within seconds. The motherboard, so to speak, is the computer just to the left. That's the screen that controls each individual police or fire frequency. With the push of a button, dispatchers can tune in to virtually any channel.
You can set it up for just police towns, just fire towns, so depending on what you're doing, and then you can hit all, and you're listening to everything. So with this on the way it is right now, we're probably listening to 30, 40 different radios at one time, and that includes, we have MEMA up, Coast Guard Channel 16, Mutual Aid Fire, Mutual Aid Police, and all the 4 towns within the Shrek system.
The next computer screen keeps track of each call received by the dispatch center. By clicking on an incident, dispatchers have the ability to instantly map its location, allowing them to guide the necessary resources into help. They can also run vehicle registrations during a traffic stop to see a motorist's history.
Usually the engines, they have a map too, but they don't know exactly where they're going.
Okay.
So I can tell them that they're going into the second entrance for number 22, and it's the first one on the right. And that's huge, because every single number on there is the actual house number. You know, so you're able to help these guys out. If they're going down County Lane, you can say, okay, number 6 is the third one on the left from the corner. It just helps them get to things with just a little quicker.
And quicker is the name of the game at the new dispatch center. Executive Director Al Wallace told me that he wants to shave minutes off of the response time now that the dispatch center is at full power. New mapping technology like this certainly works towards that goal, as does the simple fact that 4 towns are now under one roof. Wallace says dispatching mutual aid, for example, is now much easier. Take Cohasset, for example, a town with just 1 ambulance. If that ambulance is tied up on a call when another medical emergency takes place, a Hingham or Hull ambulance is usually called in. Before the dispatch center was up and running, Cohasset would have to call Hingham, ask if they had an ambulance available, and then Hingham would have to dispatch their vehicle to Cohasset, a rather cumbersome process. Now, the dispatcher just has to ask his colleague 2 feet away to send an additional crew. The 911 computers that sit to the dispatcher's left automatically plot the location of the caller in case that caller is unable to say where help is needed. Dispatchers remind you that 911 calls made from cellular devices first go to the state police and are then routed to local departments. That can take additional time, so landlines are always preferable when making emergency calls. There is word that in the not-too-distant future that may change, and cell calls may go directly to the closest local department. Dispatchers are also responsible for working the Zetron, a system which lets them talk to firefighters directly at the firehouse. Dispatchers often use that system to give responding firefighters more call details than they release over the public dispatch frequencies, especially with regard to medical calls. Dispatchers can also use the system to shut down firehouse doors in some cases, as in Hull. Until help arrives, dispatchers are often the voice of calm for panic callers. They have in-depth, step-by-step directions on how to walk callers through various medical situations until paramedics arrive, for example. And of course, many people call for help in much less dire situations as well. When the power goes out, for example, call volume spikes. Of course, they want to hear from people reporting down power lines because that's a public safety issue. They do not, however, like to get phone calls from people asking when the power will be restored. Those types of non-emergency calls bog down dispatchers from dealing with real emergencies. But since that inevitably does happen, especially on windy nights like when I visited, the new regionalized system helps out. We'll again use Cohasset as an example. Before the dispatch center, just one person answered emergency calls in town. If 10 people called to ask about power restoration, and the 11th caller is a legitimate medical emergency, there would be a big delay in getting that person help. Now, the town of Cohasset is effectively staffed by 4 or 5 dispatchers, making calls handled much faster. Likewise, Hingham typically had about 2 dispatchers before the new regionalized system, and now 4 or 5 people are there to answer emergency calls, interpret the needs, and then send the appropriate help. The reduced response time and high-tech equipment makes it easy to see why the state's 911 department was so eager to give these 4 South Shore towns grant funding. But there are still snags being worked out. Contract negotiations for the dispatchers have dragged on for months, and training is ongoing. Dispatchers not only have to learn new equipment, but they have to learn new towns. Each dispatcher has excellent awareness of his or her hometown, but now they need to know 3 additional towns inside and out. That takes time. All of the training and infrastructure improvements add up. It was predicted that Hingham would be saving money by buying into this regionalized system, but new numbers show that the town will actually spend nearly $75,000 more on dispatch services in the upcoming fiscal year than it did during the last full fiscal year before the dispatch center became operational, that being 2011. Town officials are looking into the matter, but the town administrator says the numbers fail to show how much the town saved by upgrading equipment with these 3 other towns instead of just upgrading its own equipment under the old system. Costs are still set to decrease overall once this training phase is over. Reporting from the South Shore Regional Emergency Communications Center in Hingham, I'm HinghamWeather.com meteorologist Michael Page for HCAM.